You're listening to
the Beer O'Clock.
The Beer O'Clock Show.
You're listening to the Beer O'Clock Show.
It's Beer O'Clock and this is the Beer O'Clock Show. My name is Mark, and joining me on this very special episode is my beer buddy Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
Doing all right, mate. How are you?
Very excited. Very excited. Yes.
Indeed. This is our homebrew special, and as always, we bring the finest home brewing types to your ears. This season special is a little bit different in that we've invited back 3 chaps who have been with us before, and also their beers all follow a theme. So joining us are Elusive Brewing's Andy Parker.
Good evening.
Sweet Leaf Brew Co.'s Ady Goodrich.
Evening.
And Mrs. Hobbs's Andrew Hobbs.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's good to have you along. So, 3 beers. They're all black beers. They're all Imperial. And they all have a bit of orange in them. So, I have to say, Ady, thanks very much for putting a nice label on your beer, mate.
That's the first time I've ever done it.
It's
so
good to see someone took the fucking effort. Because Andy, he put a print label on his, and Andrew couldn't even be asked.
So. True enough.
It's so we could tell them apart easily. That's what it was.
My labels are handcrafted.
So
mine's got a blue cap. What else do you want?
Yeah, that's much more fancier than some of the proper breweries we get coming in. We're gonna get right into the beers because we have 3 beers to get through. So we're going to be starting off with Elusive Brewing, aka Andy Parker's Orange Pips, which is an Imperial milk stout with, I can't read your writing, Andy. Is it bourbon?
So it's got coffee. It's got and cacao nibs that was soaked in bourbon.
Oh right.
And then the orange as well.
Very good. So 8.5% ABV.
Nice easy one to start.
Yeah, easing us in.
And folks, we are actually starting with the easiest beer, ABV wise tonight. They're all monsters. So, Andy, do you want to talk us through the making of this beer, maybe?
Yeah, sure. It's so the base beer is a beer called Invisible Wool, which is the same but without the orange. So when I brewed that one, basically I split batch and added orange to a small part of it. So in terms of the base recipe, it's effectively a milk stout. So it contains lactose and was brewed to 8.5%. Then once it had fermented out, in the last couple of days, I added some bourbon to some cacao nibs, and then let those soak while the beer finished fermenting. As the yeast dropped out, I then added the cacao nibs for 3 days, and then after 3 days, I added some coffee. These were just coffee beans. Added the coffee beans straight to the beer. And then after 1 day on the coffee, I put it on chill and dropped all that out over the next 2 days, and then it was transferred to a bottling bucket. I bottled most of it just as the regular beer, the Invisible Wool. I know you guys got to try that one, but then the last kind of 10 or so bottles worth, I had dosed in some orange. And the orange I used was from a company called Foodie Flavors. I've used before. It's kind of a natural flavouring rather than anything naughty. It's that's kind of it. So the aim was to brew something that's effectively, a coffee milk stout with hints of bourbon and chocolate, but with kind of an orangey finish to it and kind of a orangey nose especially. So yeah, that's the beer.
Because that's the obvious thing that you put with a milk stout, isn't it? Orange.
Of course.
And I think that was my interference a little bit in the development of this show. I remember one Friday night on Twitter, I had this brainstorm, and that was it. It was all of a sudden, wasn't just Imperial black beers; they had to taste like orange as well. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this first one and seeing what we've got on the nose and the feel of the beer.
Well, I've started. Andy started. Dive in, mate.
Yeah, I've already started. Yeah.
Okay, cheers everyone. Cheers guys.
Cheers.
Now, Andy, like you said, we've tried. I don't know if everyone's tried, but I know Steve and I have tried the normal version of this beer, which was stunning. But this one it's basically the same beer, but you do get that lovely light sweetness of the orange coming in as well. It adds a nice little touch to it.
Yeah, I think that it's still very much a coffee and milk stout. I think first and foremost, even beneath the orange on the nose, you can definitely get the coffee. But yeah, I think that it has settled down a bit. I opened one about a week ago, and the orange was nuts. So thankfully that's it. And it's let the other flavours come through a bit too.
Yeah, I got a good whiff of the orange as soon as I popped the cap off, but that aroma did settle down.
This is Andrew. I mean, I got more cacao nibs and chocolate coffee when I opened it, and the orange for me is coming through when you actually taste it. Like there's some sort of really nice, not acidity is the wrong word, but yeah, maybe it is acidity. There's a fruitiness to the flavour for me.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I definitely get the coffee. I really like the aroma of the coffee. It's really good. And then the orange comes through smoother when you're drinking it.
Yeah.
For me, it's that orange on the nose is just enormous coming out of the glass. It just smacks you in the face, and then it's as Mark said. There's a slight fruitiness just at the end of it when you're drinking it, and that just adds something a little bit to the other flavours that are going in there. But it does remarkably. It seems to add to the sweetness in the milk stout, and it just does bring through this lasting sweet finish to it.
It's lovely. I'm really enjoying it. This is in danger of getting all of this is going to get drunk, I think.
so smoothly to drink as well. That's the thing. Yeah.
So, and Andy, you say you added orange flavouring to this. Is that just as a syrup or something?
It's kind of a flavouring that's in. It's sent in little 10ml bottles that's are in alcohol basically. So it's I think they use Jaffa, or specifically it's Jaffa orange they use. So I think they use the zest, and they somehow, I don't know what they do, if they distill it or what they do, but they kind of get that flavour out using a natural process, and then it's kind of preserved in some alcohol.
Okay, so it just goes in as a liquid.
Yeah, it's a liquid. You just dose in. It's very, very strong. We'll probably use about 3 mils of the stuff.
Right.
How did you, Andy? How did you decide how much to use?
It wasn't that scientific this time, really, because it was a bit of an odd one where I had about 5 litres of beer left in the bottom of a bottling bucket, and I just kind of tapped a few drops in, tasted it, and then tapped a few more drops in from the bottle. So not particularly scientific, but just gradually dosing it until the flavour felt about right.
Guys, and I'm gonna ask this question to all of you throughout the evening. Kind of a 2-part question. Firstly, how much of a challenge is it to brew a big Imperial beer, doubling up on probably what you'd normally be brewing, and then secondly, how much more of a challenge did we make it by asking you to make it taste like orange as well? Yeah,
so brewing Imperial beers. I mean, I brewed this. So I've got two kits at home. I've got a kind of 5-gallon 20-litre kit, and I've got a 100-litre kit. So this was on the 20-litre kit, and the mash tun for that is a cool box, with a domed bottom on it. I do find that for the bigger beers, my efficiency goes down. That is that I don't get as good original gravity, proportional to the amount of grain used. So I do need to jack things up a little bit, have a longer mash, recirculate the mash. So just trying to get as much as possible out of the grains for the bigger beers. And yeah, I always seem to slightly miss my gravity. I was aiming for 9% on this, around 1080, I think, the OG, and I was under that. But with this sort of recipe, you can broadly get away with that. Commercial, obviously, you don't want to be doing that because you're wasting money at that point. Although you're paying less duties, so swings and roundabouts. In terms of the flavouring, I think I guess I've got previous, and I know Andrew and me worked on a cherry coke stout before using a very similar. In fact, the recipe was very, very similar indeed. I switched out had some midnight wheat, and I switched that out for more chocolate in this beer. And so, in terms of dosing flavour into that, it was very much a similar process. So you're working with a finished beer and adding flavour in, which gives you a lot more control than, say, if you start to use orange zest or orange peel or orange juice, just the natural orange in its most natural form. It would certainly be more of a challenge. So kudos to Ady, I think, who's done that. I guess we'll hear about his fun. Yeah. It's fun with that next.
Yeah, he'll get his turn now. Andy, it's you were on our first ever Homebrew special, which was almost 2 years ago to the date. So it was back in November 2013 when you appeared and you produced a double IPA that finished everybody off for the evening. Back on that show. How's things progressed for you since then, Andy? I know you're apart from Justin Mason, you're also a serial guest on the show. You've had nearly as many appearances as Justin, but just in that time, just tell our audience how things have progressed for you in your brewing and where you're at now.
Yeah, so for me, it's just a hobby that's spiraled out of control and has continued to. So I think back then was probably 2 years ago. Steve, did you say?
Yeah.
So I think since then I like to think I've certainly improved and I've been paying a lot more attention to getting things more accurate on my brew day and being more thorough. I think in the earlier days I was very almost a bit lackadaisical and I got some good beers out, but in some cases not quite what I was aiming for. So I've tried to refine that. I've tried to reduce the time it takes to brew. I mean, my first brews had some 11, 12-hour days. I guess all three of us on the show today can relate to that. But I tried to bring that down as well, just by refining the overall process. And hopefully, I'm getting some better beers out. And obviously, for the listeners that haven't heard of Elusive Brew, and then why should they have? Because we're not brewed anything yet. But I am looking to go commercial eventually, and I've got a 5-barrel brewery that's sadly in storage at the moment because of some premises wrangling. But hope to get things going probably in the new year now. So yeah, I guess it goes back to what we're saying about the hobby that's got out of control. It's probably would sum it up.
Excellent. I think it's great to hear how far you've come on in 2 years, and it's something that I'll be doing with the other guys as well this evening, is going back to their original appearances on the show and seeing how things have progressed since then. But let's just finish off this beer for now, I think. Any final thoughts around the room?
I think I can taste actually everything that says it's in it. You can get quite clearly. I think it's really good. It's really sort of, I can even get a bit of the bourbon out of it. It's really well balanced and clever, definitely.
Andrew?
Yeah, what more can I add? I mean, two things, I suppose. The level of carbonation and the creamy head on it is just lovely. And I think I totally agree with Ady. You can taste all the added ingredients. I think that's also potentially masking what a great malt bill is in it, because it's actually a really lovely stout on its own account. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I can only agree. It's just all the flavours, like Ady said, all the flavours that are on the label are coming out, which you don't get very often with beers. But the short list is there, and you're getting everything ticked off, which is really good. So well done, Andy.
Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
Right, let's move swiftly on to our second beer, because he wants to stay sober for that long. So the next beer that we've got is my mistake, an Imperial Orange Black IPA called Black as the New Orange from Ady, Sweet Leaf Brew Co. 9%. Fortunately, only a little bottle, unlike Andy's 50 bottle. So, dive in, guys.
Yeah.
Great name, by the way, Ady.
Yeah, I just came to me a moment of inspiration, really. I've not actually seen the programme. I just thought, I'll steal that and turn it around.
Mine came flying out of the bottle.
This is actually the first time I've had it out of
Yeah.
the bottle. I've been drinking out of corny kegs, and although I've sent a few bottles out to people, I've not actually opened a bottle of it myself yet. And it's definitely hoppier and a lot more aroma from the bottle than from the corny keg.
Now, Ady, I know you and I have very similar views on black IPAs and what we want them to be like. So I'm looking forward to getting into this one this evening.
It's incredibly active, I have to say. It just burst from the bottle all over my desk.
Oh no! So
I've got a great pour on mine. I've got a lovely thick black beer. It's got a nice creamy off-white head to it.
Yep.
The aroma is it's good. There's not a lot of roastedness on the aroma for me.
Mm-hmm.
There's maybe a hint of orange in there, but mostly there's kind of the piney citrus notes from the hops in there. So I am looking forward to diving into this.
Yeah. What hops did you use in this, Ady?
Citra and Amarillo as the main hops at the end, but a bit of Magnum at the start for bittering.
Okay.
So I mean, beers before I put like sort of 5 hops in or something, but I tried to go a lot more simple on this and just go for a clean bittering hop at the start and then just citrus orange style hops at 15 minutes and flame out and dry hop that would actually add to the orangeness rather than confusing it with other flavours. So this is quite a simple beer for me, really.
Okay. Well, let's get into it, guys. Cheers.
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 The sweet Jesus, it's good. It's just ridiculously easy to drink. I'll tell you what, that's a dangerous beer because that's hiding its 9% very, very well.
I mean, I've got tons of the stuff, and I'm trying to lay off it because it's quite easy to overdo it.
Yeah, that's really nice. Got the lovely black IPA character to it, but right down the middle is a big bulbous sweetness coming through. Gorgeous.
There was a bit of extra help from the sweetness as well. Put some Belgian candy syrup in it as well. You know, the dark candy syrup, which is
okay.
Adds a bit of I think a bit more complexity to it, and it's not something I'd ever used before. But I tried another black IPA with it in, and really liked the character it gave. So I mean, not only was I going for a black IPA on this, I was going for something a lot more complex than just a normal but black IPA. So I was sort of hoping the orange, the candy syrup, and the hops and the yeast as well would all sort of work together to try and just give a whole lot more depth of flavour. So I mean, it was quite experimental. I'm not. I said it was a simple beer in grain, bill, and hops, but I tried to get extra flavours in other ways that I didn't normally do. So it was a good learning curve, really.
Ady, it's Andrew. How much juice did you add?
Well, I wanted to use blood oranges after trying, the Beavertown, is it the Bloody Ale? The blood orange IPA they did. But so my first thing was I was going to try and do an Imperial blood orange black IPA because you can get an extra word in the title and make it. They're out of season. I think you can only get them in February or something. So I just had to go down the market and just get the sort of bag of oranges for £1. So I think I got like 25 for a couple of quid. Like a carrier bag full of juices oranges. A couple have gone mouldy, so there's probably about the juice of 20 to 23 in there, and the zest of about 8 or 9. All of that in the boil. Sort of about 10 minutes before flame out. And I didn't add any more orange flavour after that. It all went in then. So the only more orangey things that went in after that were more, Amarillo hops. So that had a bit more. But
and that was 20-litre batch, was it?
This was, I think I ended up with 40 litres.
Right, okay.
So that's
interesting because
I wanted 40 litres, so I sort of split the batch 2 ways. This batch we're drinking now has got Vermont Yeast, which is yeast I've not used before, but I've been recommended it as a bit more peachy, a bit more fruity. Because normally for bippers and IPAs, I use USO5, which is a bit more of a neutral. So at first, this batch was a lot tastier. It had a lot more sort of fruity notes to it. But the USO5 batch tasted a lot flatter and neutral. But that's coming along a lot more as well. So that's also quite a nice beer now. But yeah, the one we're drinking is the Vermont Yeast, which I think it's definitely added a bit more to it.
So Ady, just to ask the same question as I asked Andy earlier, what are the challenges that you face when brewing a bigger ABV beer, and also did you find it difficult using the oranges in the recipe?
Well, I looked at a couple of recipes online, and I sort of did a bit of guesswork as to how much to add. So I thought I wanted to add a bit less rather than a bit more. So I didn't want it to be really sickly orange. So I thought, well, if it's got a faint hint of it, it'd be better than having something that was just like overpowering. So I sort of took the medium ground and just went for that sort of random number really. But as for brewing the big ABV, I just sort of scaled the recipe up. It was one I'd done before. Quite a simple, typical black IPA grain bill, but I put chocolate malt in it as well to give it a bit more of a chocolate flavour this time. I don't normally do that. But the Carafa 3 that you generally put in black IPAs, that was added at the end and sparged through as normal. So that's what gives the black IPA its sort of a colour, but not actually the massive roasty flavour. So it's still quite smooth and quite sort of light and in sort of texture and everything.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there. I'm getting hardly any roasted notes off it at all.
Yeah.
What I'm just getting is just lovely orange citrus flavours coming through. There's a sharp lasting bitterness on the end of it as well. But as I said when I first started drinking this, for 9%, this is ridiculously easy, mate. I'm worryingly close to the bottom of my glass.
I mean, I went quite easy on the hops on this as well. I didn't completely overload it. There wasn't as much hops per litre in this that was in the rye beer I did for the previous show. That had I think I had 500 grams for a 23 litre brew, but this was a lot more hop sort of savvy really. Just wasn't so heavy-handed with it.
And Ady, you mentioned it there. You were on a previous show. You were on the third homebrew show that we did, which was back in December 2014. So how not too long ago for you? How have things been progressing for you in that time?
Well, I bought a bigger kit just because one came up for sale locally. So I bought a 100 litre microbrewery that I've been sort of tinkering with over the over the year. I mean, it was a bit bigger than I wanted. I probably only wanted to go to 50 litre, but this came up and I'd seen it and I couldn't refuse it really. So the first half of the year has really been getting to grips with that. Because it's quite a big step up, but I've finally got the hang of it and I finally worked out how it all works and everything. So as a result, I think I'm getting better beer and better control out of it.
Well, if this is anything to go by, I'd say your guess is right there.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Now, Ady, just going back to you were saying that you were recommended was it the Vermont yeast?
Yeah.
Why were you recommended that? What's so special about that yeast, and what did it bring to this beer?
Well, USO5 yeast, which is like a standard IPA yeast. If you're doing an American IPA, that's what people tend to use, or that's one of the most commonly used ones. But I was recommending the Vermont yeast because it's got a bit more character to it. And it's sort of a bit more fruity, a bit more, but I mean it's a bit more work to use because it's a liquid yeast, so you have to make a starter and do a few more processes before you can add it. So that wasn't something I'd done before either. So again, I sort of took a whole new approach to yeast on this, which I think definitely paid off. Because with dried yeast, you could just throw some in and see what happens. But this was a bit more of an experiment. But I'm really pleased that I tried it.
It's a smashing beer.
Good.
What other comments do we have? Andy, let's go to you, mate.
I think it's for a black IPA. I don't mind a little bit of roast in them, but obviously to style, you don't want any or very little, and certainly tick that box. It's very low on the roast. So that's excellent. I like the certainly the orange flavour comes through. Right at the front actually, and then it just sort of fades away. I think the beer, it finishes nice and clean, and for the ABV, it's got great drinkability for a beer that's 9%. I think kudos for actually using real fruit. I wasn't able to do this time, but I shied away from. So well done there. I think overall it's nice and it's very drinkable.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I think I'd like to try real fruit again in like a cleaner, simpler IPA. Just normal IPA, but actually get blood oranges next time and just sort of try like a specific style of orange rather than just cheap ones off the market that are sold by the carrier bag.
Andrew, what about you, man? What do you think?
Well, to add to just say something different from what others have said, it goes to that question I had about how much orange juice, because I think the juice that's been added really makes a difference in this beer. I mean, it is completely drinkable. It's the right level of bitterness. Everything everybody said, but it really, that acidity that comes through the juice actually makes it almost a different. It's quite a different beer and makes you sit up and notice. And it reminds me of, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but the cocktail London Water, which is a mixture of Coke and orange juice. So did anyone drink that when they were at uni? Which it sounds like a terrible idea, but it looks like the River Thames, but actually tastes great, and it reminds me a lot of that. On the colour about the Craft 3, I was interested. You asked about that. I mean, this is just a personal preference, but I like my IPAs as black as night, whereas this is sort of a darker brown. Yeah. But if you look at Black Betty that Beavertown do, that's not particularly dark either, and everyone loves that. But that's just a personal preference.
Well, I think I got my initial black IPA advice from I think your brew you did. So what
oh yeah. So, that's right. So it's my fault. Is this colour?
which we actually featured on the show as well.
We did. And that was, I think that was quite, because what I did on that one, I don't know if you did this, Ady, but I didn't just add it at the end of the mash. I added cold steeped a lot of Carafa 3 in the sparge water before I heated it up.
I think I poured it all on top of the mash at the end and sort of sparged through it. So I just sort of tipped it all on, and then. So it wasn't actually mashed in. It was just sort of
I forget what that's called, but there's a word for it, tapping or something.
Yeah.
Capping or tapping?
Capping.
Okay. Yeah.
As I say, it's personal preferences. I don't think it. If you look at the style guide, it's perfectly acceptable colour.
I think the chocolate malt added to the actual grain and mash at the beginning. I think that probably added a bit, a bit more darkness. But sort of went a bit easy on the Carafa 3. Definitely, it was only like sort of 3 or 4% or something. It wasn't a lot. I could probably put a bit more in, but yeah.
I'd say it's personal preference. I think it's a great beer.
Oh, thank you.
Steve, any final comments from you, mate?
My glass emptied far too quickly. That's all I'm going to say. I absolutely loved it. It's the sort of black IPA that I look for. More pronounced on the hops in it than the roasted flavours, but balanced out very, very well. And I think just that addition of the orange just made it so drinkable. And to repeat what I've already said, I'm in a way I'm really disappointed there's only one bottle of this, but at the same time I'm glad there's not more than one, because this would end up hurting me if there was a lot of this around. It's far too drinkable at 9%.
Yeah, very drinkable. Lovely sweetness coming through in the middle, but otherwise a really classy black IPA. Well done,
Right.
AD.
Thank you.
So we're going on to our third and final beer now. This is Naranja Orange from Mr. Hobbs. It is an impy stout at 10%. It's got a blue bottle cap, which is all you can ask for, really. So let's crack it open. Now, what was the driver behind this beer?
I've got. Right, let me tell you. I bought the McKellar book of beer. I don't know if anyone's read it. It's a bit of a coffee table book. Talks about McKellar's story all the way through, and some recipes in the back. And I'd never. I think Steve said, "Oh, do you want to come on do a beer?" And then we talked about the Imperial March, blah blah blah. And I thought, this is a good excuse to make a beer that's in the back of that. So this is actually a clone of the Tuol beer Goliath, or Goliath, depending how you pronounce it, with orange and other stuff added along the way. So this was just my excuse to have a go at a recipe out of that book.
So what's the other stuff?
So the other stuff was
the
other stuff, which I'm just sort of, because you'll see from the orange thing, the way this beer's come out, your question about what are the challenges with brewing a big beer and adding flavourings, orange flavourings, will come out in the way this beer has probably been pulled out of the bottle. So the other stuff that I added, first of all, because I wanted to do, I probably said this to you before, guys, but I'm quite into cooking, so I always think about flavours in that context. And I've had some great orange and cardamom cakes, and I found a recipe somewhere for an orange coffee and cardamom cake. So there is actually coffee in this. There's coffee in the clone. There's also quite a lot of cardamom in it, but it's been completely obliterated by the orange. Or I shouldn't prejudice your tastings. But if I brew this beer again, I'd actually leave the orange out, because I think the base beer is great, or either turn it down. But I've major on the cardamom, because the cardamom really started to work once I was fermenting the thing out before I added the orange.
I can still get
off it. Can you? Maybe I'm too close to it.
Yeah. I really do like cardamom, and yeah, I could definitely that's sort of perfumey sort of aroma. Yeah. No,
okay, good. Maybe I'm just too close to it.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, Ady. I get the cardamom on the nose.
Yeah.
Sort of
good.
Lurking beneath the orange there.
Yeah, it's quite big. So let's dive in if you haven't already. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Oh, that's a big beer.
Yeah,
it's 10%. Like, came out almost exactly on, actually, which I was very lucky.
Very perfumey aromas for me, and very perfumey on the flavours as well.
Very
interesting.
For me, the predominant flavour is coffee with a hint of orange. It's almost like a coffee that maybe somebody's laced with a bit of Cointreau in there to give it that hit. Interesting how we kind of get different flavours off of it.
Yeah, I'm not getting much. I'm getting a hint of orange on the aroma, but on the flavours, I'm assuming it's the cardamom that I'm getting, but there's something there that's quite floral and powdery on the flavours. Very interesting.
I would think the base beer is astonishing. And for such a high ABV, there's next to, I don't know if the orange is masking it or the cardamom, but I don't get any booze at all. It's got a nice bitterness to the finish, but the body is supremely light with a bit of roast there. It's base beer is really, really good.
Yeah, again, it's really easy to drink. You could have a few pints of this, couldn't you, and not know.
I don't recommend that. Ady. As you will find out after one bottle.
Challenge accepted. Yeah, it is very smooth for a 10%er, I have to say. Like Andy was saying, there's no booze there to really knock it down for me.
No, it's incredibly easy to drink. Again, as all of the beers have been tonight, it's just it's really easy to drink, and again, it does mask its ABV very, very well.
So it finished at 10:30, which is
right. gives it it's definitely got a nice sweetness on the finish. It's got a bit of a bitterness there, but like the body itself is quite full.
I mean, I think it'll age quite well. Are you keeping any back for?
I've got quite a bit. Quite a bit.
I mean, after a year or something, like I mean, I've not brewed an Imperial Stout myself yet. I mean, I'm planning on doing a vanilla one with some friends, but I think obviously the longer you leave it, the better it gets. So I think
I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
So the colour of the head as well, like that deep, I don't know, browny colour, like a creamy, deep creamy brown. I don't know what colour you'd call it, but it's really, really appealing on the eye.
Andrew, apologies if you've already said, but what hops did you put in this?
So this is Columbus and Simcoe, quite a lot. So it's over 100 IBUs, just over 100, 105.
Jeez.
Well, that's a pretty straightforward hop choice, isn't it? But you're getting some lovely flavours through from this.
Yeah. I mean, the bitterness should work. I mean, I've never done this is the first time I've done an Imperial Stout, and I looked at the hop to gravity ratios that recommended, and it's in the range. So the idea being the higher the gravity beer, the more bitterness it can withstand. I think that's the science anyway.
So how did you find that then, Andrew? Obviously, the first time you've brewed an impy stout. Much of a challenge?
Yeah. So, well, there are two aspects to this that I'll be interested in your comments on. So, in terms of the mash, no, that worked up fine. I've got a converted cooler box as well. Efficiency seemed to be fine. Fresh grain, ground a couple of days before and ordered in. The yeast is US-05. It absolutely munched through the whole thing. I used 2 packs for a 20-litre batch just to make sure. Used the Mikella starter idea, which is for the non-brewers on the show. The idea is you need some good, viable, healthy yeast that's hydrated, and so the more you can help a high gravity beer, the better. So I did a bit of that, munched all the way through it. Where I had problems was getting the thing to carbonate in the bottle, because the yeast is some yeasts find it hard to cope with high alcohol environments. So I put some champagne yeast in after trying to let it carbonate for a bit. So I basically opened the cap back up and put some champagne yeast in, which can tolerate higher alcohol. But mine haven't managed to carbonate that much. I don't know if anybody on the show whether they've carbonated up since, but that's been the first challenge. And then the adding orange afterwards. So I used orange extract, which is orange oil, zest oil, dissolved in alcohol. And I did that because I've done a number of fruit beers, and if you want to guarantee a fruit taste, then the earlier you introduce it, it seems to me the less certain it is that you'll end up with, unless you've got time to try the beers out time and time again, the recipe, your certainty of getting that flavour is reduced. So I wanted to add something that was natural at the end. But this is quite oily, so it floats, which means you might get more orange at the beginning of the beer unless you shake it and at the end. Whereas I imagine with Andy's extract one, it's probably more dissolved in the beer, which is good. But those are the two challenges, which is getting the thing to carbonate up once it's at 10%.
So also you've obviously this is the second show you've been on now, Andrew. You were on our second homebrew special back in June 2014 with your now famous black IPA, it would seem. How have things been going for you since then, mate?
I've met a lot more people and learned a lot more from other home brewers and professional brewers, which has been good. I don't brew as much as I'd like to. I probably brew about 4 to 6 times a year. Definitely got better, I think. Andy Parker would probably have a better view on that than me. Learn to relax, I think. The big thing for me that I've learned recently is using fresh grain. So I get everything done to order now rather than having stuff hanging around the house, because that seems to make a massive difference to the output. But yeah, still tootling along. In danger of doing a collab with someone soon, but we'll just have to see.
You're threatening someone, are you?
Yeah. Well, they're threatening me, I think.
I mean,
but having a lot of fun.
For me, it's been it's been great to do a homebrew show that's been slightly different from the ones that we've done in the past for so many reasons. It was great to bring people back that we've had from the first three versions of this that we did. I mean, this is the sixth homebrew special now, and it's actually the third one that we've done this year alone. So 50% of our homebrew specials have been in the last 12 months. And I think that says something in terms of the number of homebrewers that are out there that are willing to share their products with people now as well, and are willing to come on the show and talk about it. But for me, it was just great to bring the three of you back in again, see how things have been progressed for you, but also to kind of try and challenge you a little bit with kind of laying down the ground rules for tonight's show. And I think you've all raised to that challenge, and conquered it as well. I mean, all of these beers, trying to not make our listeners feel quite so jealous as they're probably feeling right now, are all fantastic. And I know I say this on every homebrew show that we've done, but these are beers that I would happily part with my cash for. They're all tremendously good, and you've obviously all put a lot of time into brewing these. So just before we get the final thoughts on Andrew's beer, I'd just like to go round a simple question. If presented with this challenge again, would you accept it or walk away? I'm going to start with Andy.
Never one to turn down a challenge, Steve. I'd love to do it again. I mean, it was good fun, and I think I always say that when you're brewing these crazy beers, it's good to have a point of reference and a baseline to work to, and that's what I did here. So there wasn't that much really new other than the orange. So in that sense, I suppose I knew what I was getting into. So it allows you to play a little bit more with different crazy flavors. And I'm sure that if the chance came up again, I'd happily come back and brew something equally or more crazy, depending on what you can come up with.
Be careful what you wish for, Andy. Ady, what about yourself?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I'd definitely try it again because, at first when you asked me on, it was, oh, well, what am I going to brew? I can't just brew another hoppy beer or something, But, when we said, it had to have these three criteria, the black, the orange, the Imperial, it was a whole new sort of world where I had to try and, meet that, So definitely, I think it's been a good learning experience as well. So, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure what we can actually say next. Where
do you go from here?
Give me a few hours, and I'm sure I'll come up with something.
I've got a good idea, but I'll share that with you in a minute.
And Andrew, what about yourself?
Definitely do it again because I learned something from it. It didn't go exactly how I wanted it, but I've definitely learned a couple of things new that will improve my brewing. So I'd definitely do it again, no question. I think if you wanted to set a new challenge, I think the tougher thing is to brew a low ABV beer and make it taste good. And maybe that's it, the lowest alcohol you can possibly brew. That's a challenge.
A nice peachy pale.
Yeah, there you go.
Now you've got me thinking. Okay, so before we do get the final thoughts on Andrew's beer, it's been interesting going around there and getting your views on that. And as we've seen so many times over the past 3 years that we've been doing this show, where we lead, others tend to follow with ideas. And some exclusive news that we got last week was that before Christmas, Magic Rock will be canning Bearded Lady Orange. Now, I can only guess that they've got that idea from this show. There can be nowhere else where that's come from. But yeah, we were supposed to put that on last week's show and completely forgot. But yeah, so it's a bit of an exclusive there. Look out for Bearded Lady Orange in cans from Magic Rock before Christmas. Yeah. Inspired by the Beer O'Clock show.
Let me say, Steve, that on behalf of the group, I think that I'm prepared to settle any claim we might have in intellectual property for a couple of free cans.
Brilliant. That's done then. Absolutely there. Okay, so final thoughts on Andrew's beer. Mark, you can start this time. You always kind of get away with going last on these final thoughts things, so I'm gonna make you jump into the ring first of all.
Well, I agree with that. Oh no one said anything.
You can't agree.
It's a lovely beer. 10% is far too smooth, far too drinkable. There's no huge boozy hits to make you slow down. It's lovely fruity, lovely floral flavours coming through. It's completely chug worthy, which at 10% is fucking dangerous. So well done, Andrew. It's a lovely beer, mate.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ady?
Yeah, no, really enjoyed it. I definitely got the cardamom there and the coffee flavours, and yeah, perfect for me, really. That's exactly how I'd expect an impy stout to be, and I think it's only going to get better with age. So, but make sure you keep a few bottles back for 12 months' time. So,
I'll send you a bottle.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you.
I was going to say we're going to be tapping Andrew up in about a year.
Yeah.
Got any of that beer left? I'd like to give it another go. Andy, any final thoughts on the beer, mate?
Yeah, look, I'm lucky enough to have another bottle of this on the shelf, so I'll be checking that out in a while to see how it settles down and matures. I think, as I said, the base beer, the base malt bill and the base Imperial Stout is astonishingly good, and you can see why it's why it led to such a great original beer into all Goliath. Yeah, very good. I think the cardamom and the orange are both there too, and work pretty well overall. It's I mean, for 10+%, it's the drinkability is nuts. So yeah, well done, good work, Andrew.
Thank you.
So for me, just to echo what everybody's already said, I'm still getting more of the coffee with just a little hint of orange in there. I'm probably hold my hand up as saying I probably don't know what cardamom tastes like normally, and I'm just throwing things on the floor now as well. So yeah, I mean it balances out really well for me. There is a lasting bitterness to it, which you kind of get from a decent coffee anyway, and for me that's kind of ticking all of the boxes. So I'm really enjoying this, and I think it's the perfect beer to have finished these three on, because it is kind of like that supping beer at the end of the evening. So it's well done, Andrew. Well done, Ady. Well done, Andy. Thanks for putting your beers forward and coming on the show again. It's been a real pleasure having you all back on again.
Can I just say that obviously Steve and I are brewers as well. We brewed our own beer this year.
Oh, you did? That was good.
Yeah.
I'd completely forgotten about that.
Which purely by chance happened to turn out to be the best beer ever brewed.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to say congratulate you guys for trying to step up to our quality.
We are not worthy. We are not worthy.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure to drink your beers again and listen to your process. One day I will actually brew my beer. I keep saying that with every special. But well done, guys. It's absolutely stunning beer. And it's an honour to drink them with you.
Oh, yeah. Cheers.
You're very welcome. Anytime.
Thanks for having us on.
So, moving on. Steve,
Mm.
have you got Instagram of the week, mate?
Sorry, I still have my nose tucked in Andrew's beer then. Yes, keeping with the theme of this week's show, it could only go to a picture of an Imperial Stout, and that picture was posted by Sparky Wright this week, who got his hands on a bottle of the good King Henry Imperial Stout and posted a wonderful black and white picture of it. So a great big massive box of nothing will be heading its way to Wales for Sparky. If you want to enter your own picture into the Prizes Prize competition, all you need to do is just put an image up on Instagram, use the hashtag Cheers Guys. If the picture catches my eye next week, you'll be the recipient of next week's great big box of nothing.
And do we have a hot topic this week, buddy?
We do have a hot topic. Again, trying to stay with the theme of home brewing. This isn't one that set Twitter alight like last week's one did, but this week's question was aimed at the homebrewers, really, so we could get some discussion going with the guys here tonight. And it was basically, how will the hop shortage affect homebrewers? So before we go around and ask these guys what they think, just some feedback from Twitter. So Beer Nouveau, less than commercial, it's easier to get small quantities of most hops. Miles Lambert, homebrewers are more likely to experiment with random ingredients anyway, will probably make them more creative. Sam Welburn, it would just make us switch things up. Try getting Centennial, it's like gold dust already. The Wolf of Outrage, that's Chris from Crema. Probably not at all, as we mostly use smaller amounts and there's plenty of choice. Who makes the same beer all the time anyway? And then Ian D, just agreeing with that comment, absolutely. Even if availability was hit that hard, we can just use other or less hops and become more creative. So lots of thoughts about getting creative with the brewing, not something that's really going to affect home brewers. So just interesting to see what the guys here tonight think about this impending Hoppageddon that we're apparently heading into. Will it affect what you guys do?
Ady, you can go first, mate.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've already started to think about this, so I'm looking at sour beers and wheat beers and other styles of beer I quite like. And I've done a couple of brews recently, experimental brews, like smoked wheat and a Berliner Weiss, where I've used about sort of 50 grams of hops or something to do beers. So the flavours there are a lot more about either the wheat, the yeast, or you're trying to get like a sour sort of aspect in there. So obviously, I mean, I still want to do hoppy beers, but it probably just won't be throwing in kilos of hops every time, because I've got like big piles spare. I'll probably be a bit more careful with them. But I mean, I think it's only going to last for a year or two anyway before the hop producers catch up and start making more. So there'll be a hop shortage for a bit, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, all the hops will be coming back.
What about you, Andrew?
Similar to Ady, I've started doing beers that have got less hops in them, but that's not because of the hop shortage. It's just because I was interested in trying some new styles, and I made a Goza this year, which is probably the best beer I've ever made, which I enjoyed.
I was going to mention that earlier, Andrew.
Yeah.
And that beer was astonishing. Really.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that was based on the Berliner Weiss sort of. Was it hops in the mash rather than?
No, it wasn't actually. I can't even remember how I did it. It definitely wasn't in the mash. No, but I did it in the boil. I think but hardly anything. So that's the first thing. I think. Secondly, I agree with one of the earlier tweets that just sort of said homebrewers will just work around it. So there's plenty of online resources that say if you haven't got this, then here are 3 other substitutes. But I kind of think that a shortage, remembering my A-level economics days, that a shortage is good for supply, to Ady's point, right? So if there's a increased demand, then suppliers will try and meet it. So it will result in more hops being available. And if you look at all the experimental stuff that's going on, and with the British growers really trying to start to meet demand and grow UK varieties that have New World characteristics, I think it's actually a good thing in some ways, because it's creating business opportunities for people, and that creativity will filter through. So I'm sure I can stand it for a couple of years.
Andy, what do you think?
I don't think it will hit homebrewers as much as it's hitting commercial brewers. So yeah, I've been looking at, obviously said earlier about setting up a 5-barrel brewery, which is not massive. 5 kilo bale goes a fairly long way in a 5-barrel brewery. But yeah, if you look at what you can buy commercially, it's really constrained. Just getting the price list from Charles Farrams and other hop merchants. It's definitely a squeeze. I think for homebrewers, there might be the odd variety or two that you can't get this year, like the likes of Simcoe, Nelson, maybe from the New Zealand harvest. The hops are already in demand. You might find those hard to come by, and when you do find them, there might be another quid or two for 100 grams. But I think overall you'll still be able to get most of what you want. And yeah, if you can't get Simcoe, is it the end of the world? Probably not. I mean, there's plenty of other good and great hops. One thing I have found as a home brewer is that there's this kind of opposite thing that happens where you can get the sexy hops, Citra, Simcoe, all the ones that people clamour for commercially. But if you want the less popular ones, you'll find less homebrew shops are kind of willing to buy 5 kilos and break a bale up of those. So I was trying to get some of the German hops and couldn't get 100 grams of those. So I think homebrewers are fairly well catered for hops, and I think the hop merchants also kind of consciously maybe look after the homebrew shops a little bit as well, knowing that 5 kilos going to a homebrew shop is going to be split 50 ways. So I think it just encourages us to experiment a bit more and brew different things. I've been brewing. What can I do with 100 grams of a bittering hop, for example? Just like this beer here, I brewed this beer, a English pale ale and a mild from 100 grams of bittering hops. So yeah, that's a challenge in itself. So yeah, don't be down, homebrewers, if you can't get your favourite hop. Just try something else.
So it's a great views from the homebrewers there. Mark and I have got nothing to add to this hot topic this week because this isn't one that was for us. But it's good to see that you guys are still trying to innovate and trying to find ways around what may or may not be a problem. And as long as there's still beer available at the end of the day, happy days.
There will still be beer. There will still be beer.
Well, thanks again, guys, for joining us tonight. Where can we find you online, Ady?
I'm as Ady Goodrich on Twitter, which is just Sweet Leaf Brewery. I think I probably know everyone anyway on Brewing, so yeah.
We have a vast and diverse listenership. Thank you very much. Andy, how about you?
I'm at Tabamatu on Twitter and also at Elusive Brew, which is the new brewery. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. Andrew?
At Hobstacle on Twitter, so my surname Tacle.
Very good. You can find us online at beeroclockshow.co.uk, on Twitter at beeroclockshow, on Instagram at beeroclockshow. You can find Steve on Untapped at beershowsteve. I'm on Untapped at beershowmarket, on Twitter at beershowmark. Don't forget you can get your beers from Ales by Mail, beautiful beers, beer merchants, and Ebria, who all now offer a 10% discount to Beer O'Clock Show listeners on any beers from the website. Check out all the details on our beer list page. Right, Stevie, what's coming up next week, buddy?
Next week we are drinking cans of beer. We are drinking Dark Star Revelation, which has recently gone through the canning process and is now available in cans. So we'll be enjoying that on the show, and we'll also be having an interview with the guys that put the beer into cans for them as well.
Very good. Ady, Andy, and Andrew, thanks again for joining us. Lovely beers.
Thank you so much, guys. Awesome stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome.
Indeed, yeah, enjoyed it. Cheers, guys.
And Steve, until next week, buddy.
Been the highlight of my week.
And mine. Bye-bye.